I'll say this about Brick, it's a pretty solid movie. Welcome to a new episode of Movies and Me, and today we have another very special guest. Of course, all my guests are special. We have the other half of the Odd Shape panel, Mr. Tom Bennis. How you doing, my man?
I'm fancy free. I'm doing good. I'm really excited to talk about this movie.
Yeah, Rian Johnson's Brick. At the time we're recording this yesterday, the trailer for The Last Jedi dropped, and it's also the same time I watched the movie, and I cannot wait to get into this because this shows what a great filmmaker Rian Johnson is. So, Tom, I'm gonna let you start off. What is it about Brick that makes it so personal to you?
I've always loved noir. My favorite noir film is DOA or Dead on Arrival, which, if you don't know what it is, it's pretty much a 1930s version of the movie Crank with Jason Statham. A guy gets poisoned, has to figure out who killed him before the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because he only has like 3 days to live. Like it's a really cool movie, and it like has like it was the first time I think in film that like it felt like something was on the line, like the tension actually moved you, and that's how Brick is. Like most movies that I say I love, like I've seen The Dark Knight a million times, but that's a movie I can put on and I'll go and I'll do something else while it's on. Brick, every time I put it on, I can't. I have to. I get sucked back in every single time. The cinematography is great. The dialogue is poetry. Like it's the whole thing is an experience and a modern look at I think a time of or a period of film that's overlooked nowadays. Plenty of properties nod to noir, like Marvel noir. There are plenty of books like that. We were just talking about Spider-Man noir before we started, but I don't think there's many movies that grasp like the elements as well as Brick, and it takes place in high school. Like it has everything that is needed for a noir, but gives it originality, and it's in color, which helps. But without making it feel like satire or like a ripoff or a joke. Like it's just really executed very well.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Especially, I like what you said about the dialogue here because the dialogue in this is not really like what usually when you have dialogue in movies, you get a lot of exposition to help keep the plot moving forward. But in this, there's next to no exposition, but each little bit of dialogue just reveals to you a little bit about the character, and it's almost like unraveling a puzzle. And since you know more about noir than me, I'll admit I'm not that great when it comes to film noir. Is that like a sort of staple with it? And how do you think Brick kind of approaches that?
I think it's a staple of it because of its time. That was like the lingo used was very much like a 1940s thing. They would like I can't like if you think Casablanca, which is a noir film slash rom com, I guess I don't know. It has that kind of like free verse talk, but in Brick, it's taken to another level. The soundtrack, which is amazing, has very little to no like percussion. Like there's a lot of horns and some chimes and stuff like that. And I always think that the percussion is either footsteps during an amazing chase scene or the language, the actual dialogue. Like that's the percussion in the film. That's what carries the scene.
Yeah, and speaking of scenes, if you want opening scenes that immediately get you hooked in, look no further than this one because it opens in like I think it's like a sewer gutter kind of thing, and you just see
Right on.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character standing over a dead body. You don't know what's happened before, and then it just cuts back to 2 days earlier. So we know where this movie's headed, but the journey getting there is just I want to say it's fun, but I don't know if that's a right way to describe it since it is such a dark tone kind of movie. Like I was expecting there to be some high school kind of breakfast clubby drama in here, but there's none of that. If this movie takes itself very seriously, but it never panders to the audience, and I really respect it for that.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, there are moments of uh, like like the illusions taken away for a quick second that these are just kids in high school. The scene where they're sitting down when he's sitting down after meeting Pin and the Pin, sorry, like the Kingpin, and his mother is there serving milk and cookies or cereal, and he's like, "Oh, what do you want to drink? Would you like milk? Oh, well, you're already having milk with your cereal. How about OJ?" And he's like, "I'm fine, ma'am." Like, it takes you away from the whole thing and being like, "Yeah, these are just kids." Another one of those that's really good is when the Kingpin and him are on the beach and they're just talking, and he's like, "You ever read Tolkien?" Like, he's just a kid in high school, or well, he's old, like 27. Um, the movie's so funny. But it just takes away the illusion that these are just like nerdy kids who are in a situation that is also serious. It is more serious overall, but there are those little hints. The straw loop, and it was like a moment of humor and tension at the same time. Like, when it breaks, you laugh because you have no other response available to you.
Yeah, and I felt a lot of the humor came from Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character Brennan, and it's not the kind of humor that it's like, oh, this guy's the comic relief. This guy, from the way he looked, I expected him to be like a sort of Peter Parker kind of nerdy guy who's maybe not so sure of himself, but he goes after Bully. There's one scene where he humiliates a guy who's clearly like one of those knucklehead kind of things, and the dialogue is just so entertaining.
How are you not going to put me in and complain that we don't win the game? He's like, "Oh, I'm a scout." Oh my god, that is a great scene. Well, the character Brendan, he's heavily based off of Spike from Cowboy Bebop. From the way, yes, and there's a lot of elements. Even and back to, if you watch Cowboy Bebop, they focus a lot on Spike's boots and stuff. And you're talking about the opening scene. What I like about it is there's no dialogue. You're just seeing what's going on. If you watch his face, he keeps a constant like eye line. He's not looking around. Like, we're seeing, like, we're not seeing what he's seeing. Like, we're getting a view of everything that's going on. It's from an awkward angle. I think it's actually reversed from what it should be. And he's just keeping a constant eye line because, like, it's like he can't deal with what's there. Like, he'll try. Like, there's parts of it where, like, his eye will dart, but then come back to the eye line. And it's so subtle. And back to the shoes. Those are two things that were given in that scene. We see Brendan's boots there. He has rough work boots. And we have Emily's shoes, which were once very nice little dainty shoes that are now all scuffed up and ruined. And it tells us so much about these two characters before any of the movie starts.
It's visual storytelling, like, told to its key. And visual storytelling is something that I hope comes back. Now, that's kind of a big thing when it comes to noir. They focus a lot on style as a way to tell the story, as opposed to, like, a lot of dialogue.
Yes, they also, like, and they'll use the lighting in order to inform the audience about how they should feel about the situation. I think one of the most classic, like, noir, like, when you think noir, you often think of, like, Venetian blinds open, and, like, the light coming through when there's some kind of exchange going on to, like, the light is kind of providing the tension in the scene. And that comes straight from its roots. Like, it comes out of German Expressionism, which, I mean, that's where we get all of our monster movies, all of our, like, Nosferatu. Like, it had a big Metropolis. Like, it made its statement, and it still comes up to this day. Lady Gaga is proof of that. But yeah, it's just, it uses visuals, like you were saying, visual storytelling, while at the same time, I think that's why it's so successful with not having to do any of the exposition. Like, you were also, like, the opening scene does not happen in chronological order. Like, there's a time before that. Like, that's, like, the middle of the film. And they actually played with the idea of putting, like, 2 weeks earlier, like, in there. But they're like, we don't need it. Like, they made a conscious decision to take out the title card. So, like, it's just so good. Like, you have to stop me because I'm just going to keep rambling.
Well, usually when we get into this, I want to see... now, there's a lot of great scenes in this movie, but is there any particular scene in it that stands out to you as just encompassing why the movie's great that we haven't talked about yet? Because I know this is one of your favorite movies.
I think, and luckily enough, I don't know if the whole scene is in a trailer, but, like, part of the scene is in the trailer. I think if there's one that defines him as a character, like and what he's about, is the standoff with the car when he meets up with Tug.
Oh, that was great.
It's the car he recognizes from when he has the phone call that Emily was supposedly in, or that was who scared off Emily from the phone call. And he sees it and he's like, oh well, fuck this guy, and he goes and he grabs like a cement block and he goes to try to throw it into this window, and then Tug's coming out and he sees him, and there's a moment where you're like, oh okay, he's gonna like put it down. And he goes to do it, and he keeps coming farther, and then he does put it down, and you're like, oh, like you're a little disappointed because you thought like he was gonna stand up to this guy, and then he just doesn't stand down at all. Like he gets beaten away from the car door. He throws a little rock at the car. The car comes back. He does not. He plays chicken with a car coming at him, and he gets what he wants. He convinces this guy that like, I'm not gonna fucking stop. You're gonna take me to this dude, like. And it works out. It just says so much about his character that no matter, and this guy gets beaten throughout this movie
to a bloody pulp.
Yeah, like to the point where like he's passing out like by the end of it, and it's like interfering with like his whole story. Like if he didn't pass out, he would have been there before before Doyle got to. No, I'm sorry, not Doyle. Dode got to the pin and shit.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up that character, because this isn't like my favorite scene in the movie, but it's one that I've got to bring up. When he first meets him and he's going past all like his goons and that, and this guy Doyd, he seems like the kind of guy who would beat up someone like Brennan, but Brennan completely kicks his ass in front of his friends, and his friends just stare and they're just staring at him.
They're all strung out though, like. He's like, I got 5 nights or he's like, I got a full night to sleep on. And you're like, what are you gonna do? I don't know the full line, but it's really clever and I love it. And again, focus on the shoes and shit because he's like kicking them and stuff. That's a common. It's Dode is just kind of a pissant. Like He just goes into whatever hole is available to him at the time, and then, well, it's kind of a poor metaphor, but yeah, he's not a glorified character in this at all.
He's not the brightest tool in the box. No.
Yeah, no, he's super dumb and reckless, like, and that's never a good combination.
Yeah, the scene I wanted to talk about, it occurs somewhere, I think it's near the third act, is where Brennan's just hanging out by himself, and he sees, like, this big dude just, like, approaching him, and you can tell just from the way he's reacting, and then we get this really big chase that you think would have, like, dramatic music and a bunch of quick cuts and everything, but there's a lot of slow shots, and it looks like a kid just running away from a bully. And even the way he takes him out is like how I would expect someone in high school to do it. He just takes his shoes off, does like some kind of epic slide thing, and then knocks him into a bar. And the tension in that was just as high as like any Bond action scene, anything from like a Mission Impossible movie. And the way Rian Johnson can achieve that without it having a lot of the dramatic stuff, that shows you his strength as a filmmaker.
And what a great misdirect to be, because he's there waiting for the answer from the Kingpin, whether or not he gets the job. And he's like, you'll know if, like, either way, like, either you'll get the job or you'll get your ass kicked. And then this dude shows up and he's like, and you're thinking like, oh no, it's not going to work out. And then right after he takes out this dude, the pin shows up and it's like, all right, you're hired. Like, it has nothing to do with him. And it's a great misdirect. Again, you're right. It's one of the best chase scenes I've seen in a while. There's very little about this movie that I'm not going to praise.
There's very little that I can't praise either. I mean, like, I don't want to throw out perfect, because there is some, like, little points where it does slow down a bit and you have to really think about it. But overall, this movie, despite it having a bit of a slow pace, it keeps moving forward and keeps letting the audience in. It never panders to them at all. Like, the characters in it are presented usually with, like, one simple trait, but then as they're talking with each other and interacting, it's like peeling back the layers, and I love when character driven stories can do that. Like this movie's clearly more driven by character than it is by plot, I feel.
It's definitely told through the lens of Brendan, which is like there's not a single scene that Brendan is not in. But I kind of want to. Do you think Brain is real? He's never in a scene. He's never seen with anyone else.
I never thought about that actually, but damn, I might have to rewatch it now with that in mind.
Yeah, it's been brought up and it's never been dismissed by Rian Johnson. Yeah, I think it's really because those are some of the slowest parts. Are the parts where he's talking to Brain and he's like, "All right, give me the rundown on this," and blah blah blah. And it's just interesting that he's the only one who ever talks to him, and it's the more the story goes along, like the more things like Brain's in charge of getting stuff done.
He's like his Jiminy Cricket, kind of.
He's responsible. Well, by the end of it, he's like, all right, I'm the one who's going to get you a car. I'm the one who's going to get you a cell phone. You know what I mean? I'm going to take it out. So it's like some people, including me, think that like he's actually the one who's like running him, like in between like fainting and stuff. Like it's almost Fight Clubby, but it's never to the point where it's like, but like all the responsibilities put on Brain. It could be tinfoil, but if you have seen this movie and you like it, yeah, watch it through a different lens. I mean, I don't know how much of the story that necessarily changes, if any. I think it's just interesting that it's possible. Even like he like provides him with a phone number. He's like, "Oh, I ran into him." He's like, because we also never see him in class. Like we see him one time, like reading Emily's notebook in like a study hall or something. But oh, by the way, that high school is the same high school Rian Johnson went to.
Whoa, that must have been great for him to go back to.
Yeah, when he's talking to the vice principal. Oh, and the relationship between the vice principal and Brendan is amazing.
Another great scene in the movie.
Where it's pretty much like taken out of a cop movie where it's like hand in your badge and gun, pretty much. That's great. But oh shit, where's I going with this? Oh, when he's talking to him about the English teacher who's tough but fair.
Oh yeah.
You know, she's a real English teacher there. That's her name. I can't remember it, but it's like it starts with a K. So she even got that notoriety through film that she's tough but fair.
Rian Johnson confirming things about his school through his film career. I wonder what he's going to have for The Last Jedi.
Oh man, I was telling you earlier. I was watching that trailer and I like. First off, well, you know, it's like, oh, no more Jedi, and I'm like, oh, and that realization like came off over me, and then I'm like, oh my god, the guy who directed my favorite movie is directing like Star Wars. Like what a like he graduated in film school from '96 and he's directing a Star Wars story. Like that is, hopefully the movie's good, but that is a like Hollywood like believe it or not story, and he's had some great hits along the way. I love Brothers Bloom. A lot of people like Looper.
Breaking Bad, Ozymandias, you directed that episode?
Oh, yeah. That's a great episode. Mandius.
And there's one more thing I want to mention about this movie. We were talking about it before we started, but femme fatales are usually a big part of film noir, and what a great one do we have in here, who's completely unexpected and kind of comes out of nowhere. I think her name's Amanda, but I could be wrong on that. But
I'm looking it up. We're prepared.
So prepared.
It's Laura.
Laura is probably the most unpredictable character in this movie.
Oh, and the fact that Brendan is aware of it, like he literally tells her to the face, like you are dangerous. Like I see you. Like you're not gonna pull the wool over my eyes, and then she kind of does. Yeah, and for her to be the bearer of such bad news at the end is just like another like stab in the gut. which again we were talking before is a big element of noir. Usually the protagonist is not, or the anti-hero, depends how you view them, but they do not, something bad happens, whether it's their own death or a death of a loved one or just the really bad news or being called a bad word.
And Brennan gets all of that.
And that's another thing too, is when the ending scene where Brain is like, "What did she call you?" And he's like, "A bad word." Like, is that just him trying to like process this information? Like, that's why, like, maybe it's just me trying to get more out of a movie I already love. Because like Kimber watches Game of Thrones like a million times, and she gets something new out of it every single time. So maybe I'm just looking for things.
Well, this is a movie you can look through with different lenses and see differently. Like, you've given me 2 reasons now to rewatch it, with the whole Brain being kind of like his Jiminy Cricket as opposed to a real character.
Yeah, or at least I feel like Brain is also a reflection of like, because Brendan is smart. He picks up on things. He's very perceptive. He like, but then there's also like this version of a kid who's perfect at doing the Rubik's cube, which by now like has been proven that that is not a factor of genius. Like, it's like the fake facade of what a smart person should be, versus Brendan, who's this bloody, pulped up kid who like is in all these like shitty situations, and he's almost smarter than this kid who's supposed to be so smart, like who shows up to school 3 hours early. And
Well, there's a big feature that I'm sure a lot of Movies and Me fans are aware of now. Tom, I want you to imagine something, alright? Imagine that I've never seen Brick. What are you going to tell me to get me to watch it right away?
I need a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love getting these kind of reactions when I ask this question.
I think a lot of directors can be judged on their first movie, and especially with something so big coming out now, Star Wars, I feel like it's very important to revisit some of this, because I'm hoping he uses some of his visual cues and this movie has great cinematography. The soundtrack was done by his cousin on like a Mac, like with a shitty microphone. Like, it is something. I think the budget was like $45,000. Like, this is a movie that like is built from the ground up with like real people. Like, it feels like something. Like, it has so much heart, and you can tell that in everything. If you watch this movie and you love the dialogue and you love this how the story goes, go on Rian Johnson's website. He had a short story of it written before he made the movie, and it's available for free on his website. Like, the story is that good. It's a revisit to a genre that I think is missing from nowadays, besides just like I was saying before, like nods to it. But great acting, great soundtrack, moments of tension, action, wit. The girls aren't hard to look at. For you Lost fans, and I know there's plenty of you in there, Emily is a girl from Lost. I don't know which one.
Eric's going to be watching now.
I'm trying to get every angle here. This way Cal watches it. Yeah, it's just like, I don't want to be that guy who's like, oh, well, every single thing about it is good, but like this movie is almost Shakespearean. Like it could be seen as like iambic pentameter, like the way they talk and stuff. I don't know if the syllables match exactly, but it's that kind of rhythm if you're familiar with that. And like Brad Branderson, like, is such like a jackass that like he could be like a fool from a play. Like, that's the jock guy who gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
With, again, like, there's such a cool focus on the boots, and that they focus on all of the characters' like shoes at some time, because he even says like you can learn so much about someone from their shoes, like their personality, like with like how much work they do. Like, there's so much like there that will tell you about their character. And this is like those focus when he's kicking them in those shins, and like Brad Banderson, who like just got kicked in the shins. Like, all right, let me try to attack you the exact same way again, just to prove how much of an idiot I am. And he just kicks him in the shin again. And you were saying before, he took off the boots to trip the dude. Like, and that focus on like, oh man, it just the tiniest like things he can focus on makes the story so good. And I probably have missed some. I'm sure of it.
But we get the gist of it. You love this movie.
Oh yeah, and this movie's we didn't even talk about like the real crime aspects. Like there is like warring factions of like organized high school crime, I guess, and kidnappings and like people overdosing on bad drugs. Like the whole premise of the movie is like this brick of drugs goes missing from a batch that's already been tainted and has focus on it. Poor Franco. So, yeah, if you don't stop me, you better stick the dogs on me because I'm just gonna keep going.
Well, I think that'll wrap us up. There's a funny thing you mentioned here. You can tell what someone's personality is like from their shoes. I wear Converse. What does that tell you about me?
Converse?
Yeah.
That you're below the age of 23 and well, hold on. What are they? High tops?
No, they're just the regular ones.
All right. You're under the age of 26 then. What's the pattern on them?
Just black and white.
Well, I guess it's very simple then.
Okay, I think that'll wrap us up here. Tom, thank you so much for joining me. I know you've been running on fumes here with staying up doing overnights, but I want to thank you again for coming on my show. And where can the good people find you and anything you'd like to plug? What's coming up on Odd Shape Panel that we can look for?
Well, as you said, I am up late on nights because my profession as a vampire hunter,
of course,
that's the only time to work. But the next Odd Shape Panel, we're going to be doing Stephen King movies and adaptations suggested by you, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was.
So we'll talk about Salem's Lot, and we'll talk about Langoliers, and we'll talk about pretty much all of the direct-to-TV movies. Now, we'll talk about all the other adaptations too, but Kubrick is going to get a shout-out, of course. And I'm pretty sure you and Morgan also did... I can't remember which podcast. One of Morgan's podcasts on Stephen King adaptations too, right?
Yeah, it was the first ever episode of Horror House I was on. I did Stephen King adaptations.
So a familiar topic. So if you can't wait to talk about Stephen King, or you have no idea about Stephen King, you should check that out, and then you come and check us out, and Nolan will be there. Mm-hmm. Say hi to him. Yeah. Sorry. You can also talk to us at Odd Shape Panel on Twitter, on YouTube, or Odd Shape channel, and send Kimber a tweet. Kimber at Kimberbatch_OSP.
Yeah, she was on this show as well, talking about There Will Be Blood. Now we've got the both of you on. It's like the circle has been complete.
So which movie's better?
Don't make me do that. Damn. Oh, God, they're both so great.
If you had to recommend one of those movies to your friends.
Oh, God. Oh, all right, give me a sec here.
No, I'm not going to push you. No, because you're going to get a biased opinion because I'm here and Kimber's not. It's not fair. I'm
going to say what you should do is buy both of these and do a double feature.
Which one would you watch first, though?
I'd watch There Will Be Blood first and then lead into Brick.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I would go with Brick, so I'd be stuck with a slow burn.
That's fair enough. And as always, guys, you can follow me at Nolan Dean 27 and use the hashtag Movies and Me to continue the conversation. Next week, all the way from Australia, Mr. Movies is going to be joining us, talking about one of my absolute favorites, American Beauty. And I cannot wait to get into that with him. And if you like this episode, you can hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.